Right now, we are joined by a very special guest, a guy who knows all about SEC football because spring practice is underway, not only just for the Razorbacks, but for everybody involved in the SEC. So let's go ahead and welcome in our next guest. It is Chris Gordy of the Locked On SEC podcast, as well as Sports Talk 790 down there in Houston. And Gordy, as always, man, appreciate you joining us. How you doing this afternoon?
Yeah, definitely, man. Good to be on with you. And man, it's this is always a fun time of year because there's so much going on, right? Baseball's into the thick of it, about to start conference play. Softball's, they're in conference play now. We got, the SEC tournament happening, and then of course March Madness right around the corner. And man, just a busy time of year. And yeah, of course we got every SEC team on the practice field, with Mizzou being the one weirdos that they'll play their spring game this weekend because Eli Drakewitz likes to be weird and do it way earlier than everybody else. But yeah, it's that weird time where everybody's on the practice field this week in the SEC.
Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz being weird, never heard of it. Didn't ever think that would exist. I mean, who would have guessed that? But no, I know it's a fun time and people getting revved up for at least a little bit of the spring ball. And I know Razorback fans are, but maybe in different ways. And you had a really great sit-down interview there with Taylen Green, which, fun fact, here at 90 State Sports, the Boss Hog podcast with the offensive lineman from Arkansas actually featured Taylen Green earlier this week, and I know you had a great interview. So just tell us what you got out of him and what you were able to speak with him on, because from all intents and purposes and from what I've heard from him, he's a very well-spoken individual, a great leader, and it seems like he's going to be QB1 when this is all said and done.
Yeah, he's a good kid. Dual threat quarterback. The big thing he said to me, he loves Sam Pittman, but he said the biggest sell for him was getting to play for Bobby Petrino. And he talked about, just the style of the offense really suiting his skill set. And, I don't want to do a one-for-one compare. Look, I'm going to say the words Lamar Jackson. He's not Lamar Jackson, okay? Can he be very successful and maybe at times have shades of a great play that Lamar Jackson made? Maybe. Keep in mind, Lamar Jackson in college had some up and down moments. I mean, I remember watching him on a Thursday night down in Houston playing the Cougars, and he got sacked something like 11 or 12 times in that game. It was like ridiculous. But all that being said, that's kind of who Taylen said he, of guys he models his game after. He mentioned Lamar, he mentioned Josh Allen, he mentioned Justin Herbert. Obviously, these are guys that are big-time NFL quarterbacks. And again, we're not making a comparison. We're just saying, like, what's your style? What can we expect? And watching some of his highlights at Boise, he went through a lot of stuff there with coaching changes, different, all this different stuff. He thought he was the guy, and then they brought in, they had other quarterbacks behind him, and, he got benched at one point and didn't really know what was going on. So I understand he went through a lot of turmoil there. But at the end of the day, after injuries, he ends up the guy at the end of the year last year at Boise and leads them to a Mountain West championship, was MVP of that game. So the kid has got some unique skills. I would like to see him continue to develop that arm talent. I think he has an arm that can get better as time goes along, more accurate. I want to see him throw some more deep balls as well. But we know the running ability is there. That's going to be a key for his game, and it's different from KJ, right? I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to, well, is this an upgrade? Is this clear downgrade from KJ Jefferson? Whatever. It's different style. I think he's more elusive, whereas KJ was more Mack truck, try to run you over. So, it's just gonna be interesting to see. I think it's a win-win with Petrino coming in. I think that playbook is still very relevant and can win in the SEC. And I think they're gonna still say all the right things, that it's an open quarterback competition, and they're gonna make Taylen go out there and earn it. But all the vibes and everything I'm hearing so far is that he's the leader in the clubhouse. And at the end of the day, I think we will have Taylen Green as your starting quarterback and Jaquindon Jackson as your starting running back.
So, last year, Gordy, as much as anybody, Arkansas really struggled. And what was surprising was the offense being as bad as it was, because you returned KJ Jefferson, you had Rocket Sanders. Both of those guys are at different schools right now, with KJ being at UCF and Rocket Sanders actually being at South Carolina. But you mentioned Bobby Petrino, Taylen Green. You got pretty much the entire wide receiver crew back. You got Luke Hasz, a true freshman last year that unfortunately got hurt early in the season, but looked really great. The offensive line, there's been a lot of changes there on the staff. But overall, the offense specifically for Arkansas, with Petrino at the helm, how good can this offense be with Taylen Green, with all these guys coming back into this year, and especially given the schedule that Arkansas has in the SEC?
I mean, what's crazy is even if they're just middle of the pack, it's an improvement from where they were last year. I mean, Dan Enos is going to be, as much as vilified as Chad Morris still is in Fayetteville. I think when we talk about dirty words, I think Dan Enos is one of those dirty words that's going to get thrown around. I do think they're a little bit deeper. Like I think you're going to see, I think, Dubinion is shown he can carry the workload. Like I said, I'm excited about Jaquindon Jackson to see what he can do. But yeah, bringing the receivers back. I mean, they're looking for the alpha, right? I mean, since Taylen left, who's been that guy who can step up and be that guy. But Taylen's was very complimentary of Armstrong and Tesla, and we'll see what guys like Jadon Wilson bring and all that. But man, it's a group that I think is going to be like, how can they not be better than last year? Put it that way. Like, and you mentioned Haas. I mean, he had the monster game against LSU and just looked like the sky is the limit for him. So maybe I'm just being uber optimistic. I know a lot of people across the SEC outside of, Arkansas country, look at Sam Pittman as dead man walking. And, basically some people think there's nothing he can do to save his job because the schedule's brutal. And we get that. But man, look, if the offense is decent, I go back and look at what Petrino did with Connor Wegman last year. He had Connor Wegman playing his best football in an A&M uniform before he got hurt. And obviously they had the pivot and, he had Max Johnson and all that. It was just a mess. But I thought Bobby Petrino was getting the best out of Connor Wegman. And so I'm encouraged. I do think that the arrow's pointed upward for this Arkansas offense. And we know in the SEC these days, you got to score points. I think the defense will be a little bit better with some new pieces back there, but you got to score points in this league to win. And I'm optimistic. I think they've got some players that are ready to step up, and I think they're going to score some points this year.
Well, you mentioned Sam Pittman, and I think that's where everyone's question is kind of getting alluded to as far as maybe a dead man walking. It's his fifth year. Each year since 2021, he went from 9 wins, 7 wins, and then 4 wins. Certainly seems like his back is against the wall, but they've still been competitive at times. Even in the beginning part, at the end, it kind of fell apart. But in the beginning of last year, he lost to Alabama and LSU both on the road by a field goal, lost to Ole Miss by a touchdown. It seems like they're competitive, but do you think that Sam Pittman does enough this year to keep his job and remain on staff and on coach as the 6th year rolls around next season?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is no. I mean, again, that's the if we're making betting odds, like I haven't seen, normally we get one of those websites sends out like, odds on the first SEC coach to be fired. I'm sure him and Billy Napier are going to be right up there at the top. But, there are some swing games. And you mentioned they played some really close games last year with some close losses. I think that Oklahoma State trip in week 2 is fascinating because, you win that one, you come back home, I think you beat UAB, you're going into Auburn 3-0. And I put that one as a 50-50 game right now. Auburn has not taken that step forward, going into year 2 of Hugh Freeze on the Plains. Like they're quarterback handicapped. I mean, they're putting all their faith into one guy, and I don't think that's the right move. I think they should have hit the transfer portal to go, upgrade the quarterback position, and they have not. So, Auburn, like I said, I put it 50-50. The defense takes a big step back because they lose a lot of pieces in that secondary. Ron Roberts is now over at Florida. So you win that one, suddenly you're 4-0, going to Dallas to go play A&M, which we know is typically always a close game. And then who knows after that? You win that one, you're 5-0. You can take a loss to LSU or Tennessee. And, I think Mississippi State's going to go through a real hard transition period. They just don't have the talent right now. So I'm not scared of playing them in their house. And then you get Ole Miss and Texas at home. And then Missouri, I think, is going to take a little bit of a step back this year. I know you guys have had trouble with them recently. So I lay all that out to say, like, 7-5 is doable, and is 7-5 enough to keep his job? I would say, yeah. I think Razorback fans would be a little bit optimistic. Now, a lot of people might say, well, where's that really getting us? We should be taking that leap forward, but I think 7-5 is the bare. Anything less than 7-5, I think they're making a change. I think even 6-6 and going to a bowl game isn't enough. There's got to be that leap forward, and it's a schedule where you avoid Alabama. It's a schedule where you avoid Georgia. I mean, you avoid some of the big dogs in the conference. So, look, we always talk about Arkansas' schedule, and it is always brutally tough. But when you get to avoid the two, mainstays, the two big dogs that have been the big dogs the last few years in the SEC and Bama and Georgia, this is your best opportunity to get to a 7-8 win season.
We're speaking with Chris Gordy here on the John Neighbors Show. He is the host of the Locked On SEC podcast, as well as Sports Talk 790 down there in Houston. Gordy, I want to circle back to the Bobby Petrino thing, because if it wasn't for that hire by Sam Pittman, people were ready to get the pitchforks out and have this man fired. And that at least provided some excitement and some energy. He was at A&M last year, but even in the press conference, he had alluded to he wasn't able to have full reign over a lot of things that maybe made him feel uncomfortable. But this year, it seems like it's different, because Sam Pittman's like, hey, it's all you. But just looking at him, how do you think that hire is going to work out for Arkansas? And also, is it going to be where it's light years difference of what Arkansas can do? I guess really the question is Arkansas's defense or the offense going to be the reason why they have success this season?
Well, it's got to be the offense. It's, again, I go back to, you got to score points to win in this league. And again, I go back to Exhibit A of what Connor Wegman was at the start of last year with Petrino calling the plays. They put up 52 points on New Mexico in week 1. They go and lose at Miami in week 2, but the offense had some inconsistencies, turned the ball over, but the defense was pitiful. I mean, they let was it Tyler Van Dyke throw for like 400 yards on him and score 48 points. Offense still got 33, so I give them that. And then they put it on UL Monroe the next week, 47 points, and then of course that Auburn game gets away from them, where Wegman is hurt and done for the year basically. So I just look at that sample size through the first few weeks where the offense was looking really good with Wegman running the show. They were still kind of running back by committee last year with A&M. They were still kind of struggling to find that replacement for Devon Achane. And, they kind of went running back by committee with Amari Daniels and Levy and Moss and those guys. But I think Arkansas is in a little bit better spot. If Jaquindon Jackson is as good as I think he will be, with Rashad behind him and, a bevy of backs, I think this offense can look a little bit like that. And again, be the strength of this team. I think we've gotten a little bit jaded because we've heard this the last 2. Oh, KJ Jefferson's back. Oh yeah, Dan Eno. It's like we got a little jaded thinking we were going to see that. So I understand why some people will be skeptical, but I like the pieces. Everything I've heard is that the offensive line is going to be way better. That's obviously been the weak point the last few years, and was supposed to be a strength under Sam Pittman. If you'd asked me when he was hired at Arkansas, I would have told you, well, the one thing you never have to worry about with a Sam Pittman coach team is the O-line's going to be strong. Well, it hasn't been, and it was not last year. But, Carmona, Blackstock, some of these pieces they brought in, I think they can be better. I know Ty Crawford, I had him on the show last year. I know he's been putting in work trying to get better. So we'll see. If the offensive line is holding their own and they're given, and again, with the dual quarterback, it kind of changes everything too. If Taylen Green can roll out and buy time with his feet, you don't have to be perfect every time in pass protection. But if you can run block, open some holes for those backs, yeah, I'm excited to see, man. Again, maybe I'm being way too optimistic here, but I think the Arkansas offense can be the strength of this team and help lead the way.
Well, I know that there's not a whole lot to dive into as far as any specifics of it, but it was really interesting, speaking of the Arkansas offense. You had Jimmy Smith, the running back coach, leave after spring practice day 2. Like, he was literally practicing with the team and coaching them in the morning, and then the afternoon, he was named the new running backs coach of TCU. Arkansas moved quickly on that. But my question to you, Gordy, is something like that and a move like that, is that bad for stability? Is that a bad look for Arkansas, maybe a bad look for Pitman when you're having one of your best assistant coaches, at least in recruiting and everything, leave after spring practice day 2? Or is it just say sometimes it happens because that's college sports, and when opportunities arise, you have coaches taking them regardless of the timing of them?
Yeah, that's where we are right now with college football. I mean, it is. Like, look around the league. When you look around the league, John, and see all the changes we've had. I mean, Alabama literally, they make a hire to bring in Kalen DeBoer, and Ryan Grubb is going to be the OC. He's on campus talking to boosters and recruiting, doing in-house visits, and then all of a sudden he's going to the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, it has been the wildest offseason for turnover on assistant coaches I think we've ever seen. And I need to do the math, but man, I think somebody said we don't have the same OC or DC in the same position at any SEC school that we had 3 years ago. Like, it's been complete upheaval and turnover on every staff. So if that doesn't tell you something right there on how, it's a moving target. And I credit them for, getting Colby Smith in. And obviously he's a guy who knows Petrino very well, and they're going to work in sync together. Again, if we're critiquing the hire, I mean, I think it's, a guy that at least is going to be on the same page as Petrino and doing what they want to do. But yeah, I wouldn't say, it's easy to go, oh, this guy looked at what he had and said, oh, we're going to be fired after this year anyway. Whatever. I just don't put any stock into it. I mean, we just saw, LSU's OC, they win the Heisman Trophy with Jaden Daniels, and he still leaves and jumps ship for Notre Dame. That doesn't mean he doesn't believe in Garrett Nussmeier. It just means he got a better opportunity to get more money. He's closer to home where he's from. So, everybody's got their own reasons for moving on, but I don't put, 10 years ago, yeah, you would have been like, what the hell's going on? Why are we losing all these assistant coaches? But that's where we are now, man. There's no loyalty anywhere. It's about assistant coaches getting paid more. It's all about guys go look around the league right now and see how many guys have title of co-OC, co-DC, assistant head coach, assistant to the head coach. It's just like, it's so funny, all the titles that they've had to add to guys, and the big thing behind it is more money, pay raises. A bump in pay here, yeah, I'll jump ship from Auburn to Florida. Ron Roberts, like, why? Everyone's like, he had a great defense at Auburn last year. Why would he leave? Florida, more money, and an added assistant title role over there at Florida. So I don't put much stock in it. But again, if we're looking at Colby Smith, I think it's a great hire, and we'll see how he and Petrino operate.
You mentioned the uncertainty and how crazy it is in college football, and you go back to no loyalty being there, which I agree with you. But like, is that good? I mean, loyalty is always a good thing, and I think people are kind of still weary of the future of college football and college sports in general. But the lack of loyalty and everything, I don't know, man. I don't like it, but it's here. It's almost like I don't like it, but I have to embrace it. I don't like it, but it's going to be the way it is. Like, how do you approach this where there is no loyalty and there's a lot of uncertainty and you never know what's going to happen any given time, any given year, any given month?
It's just money, man. You got to reward your coaches who do a good job. And I think even more so if your OC or DC did a pretty good job, not a great job, but did a pretty good job, you got to talk bump and pay. I mean, because there is somebody out there lurking, ready to go grab them. It's crazy. Like I said, I mentioned Mike Denbrock. LSU said, we got to pay Mike Denbrock. He just coached Jaden Daniels to a Heisman Trophy win and had a proposal on the table for a bump and pay, but it still had to go to the board and get approved and all this stuff. And while that was in the works, Notre Dame swept in and grabbed him. So, again, it's all about the money. It's all about the dollars and cents. A few weeks ago, Lane Kiffin said, Derek Nix is on my staff. He ain't leaving. He's an Ole Miss Rebel through and through. And 2 weeks later, he's announced as Auburn's new OC. It's just, we have had the biggest influx of or changes on assistant coaching staffs I think we've ever seen in the SEC this offseason. But this is just the day and age we're in. It's all about the dollars and cents. And while we're talking about NIL and getting the kids paid, and rightfully so, you also got to be talking about paying your assistants. And when somebody's good, it's hard to retain them, man. I mean, LSU had to step up to the plate big time to get. Bo Davis played his career at LSU in college. He has been the white whale for LSU. They've been trying to get him as an assistant for decades. He was at Alabama. He's been at Texas under Sark, and they loved him there. I talked to Devondre Sweat at the Sugar Bowl, raved about how great Bo Davis was as the D-line coach at Texas. It took LSU stepping up and paying an exorbitant amount of money to pull him out. Brian Kelly gets him as his D-line coach. So, again, loyalty goes a certain way, but the Benjamins are what rules the world now.
Speaking with Chris Gordy of Sports Talk 790, as well as the Locked On SEC podcast here on the John Neighbor Show. Now, Gordy, looking at the SEC in general, I'm curious of your thoughts. There's a lot of new coaches. I mean, you got Elko down there at Texas A&M. You got Levy over there at Mississippi State. Kalen DeBoer, of course, at Alabama, which is one that a lot of people are going to be watching. But as far as the new coaches, who do you think is going to be not only the most successful in year one, but set up for most success moving forward in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that DeBoer is set up with the greatest setup, right? I mean, he's got the most talent. Alabama, people forget, still had a top 2 recruiting class this year, even with the transition away from Saban. Convenient on that timing of Nick Saban announcing the retirement. But, I do think that I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he does. There is an immense pressure on DeBoer there. And look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know if it's going to work. And it's okay to say that. I saw so many folks in the media immediately jump ship or jump to, this is a home run hire. What a great hire for Alabama. Oh, Bama's going to be just fine. And I asked those people, like, what is fine? Like, what's the expectation for Bama? And most realistic Alabama fans I talk to say, look, 10-2 and making the playoffs this year would be huge win for DeBoer in year one. But there are a lot of those Feinbaum Alabama fans that think, no, 12-0. We're going undefeated. We got Jalen Milroe back. We're going 12-0, and we're winning the SEC, and we're beating Georgia. And I just think I encourage all those Bama fans, like, take a reality check. Nick Saban was the greatest coach of all time. He's gone. DeBoer can be awesome, but, like, you know, I think realistic. I asked people, I said, do you think winning one championship in the next 4 years for DeBoer is a win? And most people I talk to say, yes, that's great. Any team would take that, except Alabama. The standard is higher than that. Those fans have been spoiled, and they're like, one championship in 4 years? Hell no. Like, DeBoer should be competing for one every year. And it's just, I just don't think that's realistic with this landscape of college football right now. So, I think DeBoer, like I said, he is the most set up for success among the new head coaches, but I like Elko, man. I think A&M's schedule sets up very well. They've done a tremendous job quietly in the portal. Like, Ole Miss got all the headlines as, you know, Lane Kiffin was the portal king, but there was about a week there where A&M jumped Ole Miss before they added one or two more players, and A&M had the number one transfer portal class at one point. They've addressed a lot of needs, and it's not a lot of household names. It's a lot of guys you probably haven't heard of, but I think, you know, and the Aggies at least have tempered expectations. They're like, look, we know this is going to take time for Elko to build this. That's why we paid Jimbo Fisher a fortune to go away. But I could see A&M getting 9-3. I don't know if 10-2 is realistic, but 9-3, 8-4 in year one, that's certainly a step forward from where they've been with Jimbo Fisher these last couple of years. So A&M's in a great spot. Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State, I think he's an awesome X's and O's coach. I just think he don't have the dogs, man. You look at that Mississippi State roster, it is depleted. They had to go get Blake Shapen, the quarterback from Baylor. I've been asking people, I'm like, is he the starter? Like, it's a rough roster right now for Mississippi State, and it's unfortunate. The passing of Mike Leach, Zach Arnett, they tried to pivot. It didn't work. So it's going to take him some time there, Jeff Lebby. I've seen Mississippi State, people have got them winning like 2-3 games this year. Like, they think it's just going to be abysmal there, and I don't know, man. I'd have a hard time making a case against it, but again, to answer your question, I think DeBoer is probably in the best spot, but man, he is under the most pressure. I keep saying, if I'm Kalen DeBoer, keep your cell phone off, block out the noise, because they're going to lose a game this year. When they lose that first game, it's incumbent on him to reset the team, get back on track, because if he reads any of those news clippings, it's going to be all, this guy ain't Saban, he sucks. Like, it's going to be brutal.
Well, also, too, about the quarterback position, I know you've mentioned a few of the guys and on these teams that have new coaches and whatnot, but I also feel like the SEC, quarterback-wise, I don't know who's going to be the best. I mean, you kind of have some ideas maybe, but there's just a lot of uncertainty at that position and makes the conference in general, especially post-Nick Saban, well, yeah, I guess Texas probably will maybe even be picked to win in the SEC because of the quarterback and who they have returning. But everybody else just, I don't know. There's no quarterbacks in this league right now to where I'm like, oh, yeah, these are the guys, and these are going to be the ones that win. They may be on Heisman watch. So just the quarterback position in general seems pretty uncertain, too, in this conference.
Yeah, we'll start with the knowns. Carson Beck was really awesome last year. Like, I put a sneaky last summer. I put a Heisman future bet on him, and it didn't win. But there was a stretch there where he was playing really well. I'm like, oh, maybe. And then Jayden Daniels put up stupid numbers. I'm like, well, that's out the window. But a lot of people expected Carson Beck to be a Heisman contender. Look, newsflash, Georgia's loaded again, and the schedule sets up pretty well for them. I think Georgia's got a great chance to go undefeated or go 11-1, and they'll be in the playoff. And the whole thing about a three-peat, last year. I mean, God, you lose one game, a close game to Bama in the SEC championship, and you get ousted. Meanwhile, Bama could lose at home to Texas, and yet they still get in just because they beat Georgia in the SEC title game. It's still mind-boggling that Georgia didn't make the playoff last year. They were still one of the 4 best teams in the country. But I think Carson Beck is going to lead that charge. He'll be a Heisman contender. I think Brady Cook at Missouri had an awesome year last year. Can he build off of that? Well, he's got Luther Burden back. They do have to replace Cody Schrader in the backfield. They brought in a couple guys through the transfer portal. We'll see if they can do that. But I think Brady Cook's really good. Obviously Milroe, everybody thinks that in a DeBoer, quarterback-friendly offense that he'll be able to look really good. This is going to be a big test for DeBoer. This is the first time in a couple years he's not going to have Michael Penix, to coach and save his butt. So, but Milroe showed some signs down the stretch last year, winning the SEC championship, played pretty well in the bowl game against Michigan. So He'll be up there. And Jackson Dart's the other big one. I mean, Ole Miss has got the easiest cakewalk schedule I think we've ever seen them have. And even if they lose their 2 toughest games, Ole Miss is going to go 10-2, and they'll either be in Atlanta playing for the SEC title, or they'll just be 10-2 and go on not playing the SEC title, but making the playoff as an at-large team. So Jackson Dart, I think the world is set up for him to just absolutely dominate this year with, the pieces they brought in. They bring in Juice Wells. They bring back Trey Harris. They got so many weapons that, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss are going to score a lot of points. And then there's the other ones like can Connor Wegman bounce back healthy and be really good? I think he can. I think Garrett Nussmeier, he's a gunslinger at LSU. He's going to throw for a ton of yards and touchdowns. The problem is he also throws interceptions. So I almost call him Brett Favre-esque. Like, he'll throw for a couple thousand yards and, 28 touchdowns, but does he have like 15 interceptions to go with it? I think that's what you're going to get from Nussmeier. Nico Iamaleava was awesome in the bowl game for Tennessee. That was against the best defense of the country in Iowa. So, if that's a precursor of what's to come, he used his legs, showed his dual threat ability. And then don't forget, Graham Mertz at Florida was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the SEC last year, was leading the conference in completion percentage most of the year, and he's back for Florida, even though everybody thinks they're going to suck. Graham Mertz is a good guy to have back there. You look at Kentucky, they bring in the kid, the backup from Georgia to come in and hopefully be the guy. South Carolina, I've been hearing so much stuff about Lenora Sellers there. Vandy brings in Nate Johnson, transfer from Utah, who I've been hearing is, actually a really good athlete for Vanderbilt to get. And so we go from there, like I said, probably Blake Shapen at Mississippi. It sounded like Taylen Green, of course, at Arkansas. And then, Auburn, I just think sticking with Peyton Thorne is a mistake for Hugh Freeze. They may add a quarterback post-spring practice through the portal, and I really think they should. But, if we're kind of putting tiers, obviously it's Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, Brady Cook and Jalen Millar all at the top.
All right, last one before I let you get out of it real quick. Gordy, why are you wearing a Kentucky shirt?
My wife went to Kentucky, so she buys me these, and I put them on. I'm indifferent to them, but when they're playing the NCAA tournament, she makes me put these clothes on. And look, I mean, I'm whatever. If Kentucky wins, they win, great. But how about Calipari, man? Pressure on him. I mean, like, he's been one and done a couple times recently in the tournament. Like, if he doesn't go far this year, there's be some real tough, awkward conversations in that behind the scenes, because he's got that lifetime contract. But when he decides to hang it up, he'll transition into like front office booster role kind of thing. But look, I'm indifferent to Kentucky. I like Mark Stoops. He's an awesome guy. Again, Cal, if he wins or loses, I'm indifferent. But it's the wife. She went there.
Well, Gordy, as always, man, we appreciate you. You can catch him on the Locked On SEC podcast as well as Sports Talk 790. Appreciate you, man, so much, and enjoy the rest of spring practice, man. We'll be catching up with you.
Thanks, John, and congrats on the whole Natty State, man, thing. You guys are killing it over there.